Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. In this video, we will be doing a playthrough of the game An Army at Dawn. This is a Panzer Grenadier game. It is published by Avalanche Press and is designed by Mike Perryman. The scenario we will be doing is called Chewy-Gooey. It is from Chapter 3, Hard Knocks. It is right here. Scenario number 5. As you can see, it is 26 November 1942. We're using maps 78 and 79. I've already laid out the Americans. There's one more thing I need to do that I haven't done yet, and that's set up the dug-in units, but I'll do that momentarily. I also need to draw my officers for the Germans. The Germans are off-map currently, so those are a couple things that I'll do to show you how that works. I already drew the American officer. He's here. He's a major, and they only have one. They have one reduced infantry platoon and a Jeep, which is right here. No, the Jeep is actually down here. This is an M375, so it's an APC. They've got a bunch of Stuart tanks right here, all grouped kind of in the middle. And all of the units have tank leaders, and we'll talk about what that means. All of the units on both sides, that is, have tank leaders. They have a few other APCs. They have a couple of APCs down here and a Jeep as well in the town. Now, this town represents the Chewy-Gooey, which is what I guess what the Americans called it. I'm not sure how it's actually pronounced, but it's spelled Chouy-Gui, which you can see why they would say Chewy-Gooey. That's kind of what it looks like if you are an American. Over here we have our turn track. We start at noon, and it's a 12 turn, so we would end up at each turn is 15 minutes. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It will end at 14:45 will be the final turn. So it's basically a 3-hour scenario. And the Germans have a couple of victory conditions. They actually have 3. I shouldn't say a couple. They have to eliminate 3 American steps for every German step lost. They have to control all the town hexes on board 79 at the end of play. That's the aforementioned Chewy-Gooey down here. And then they must exit at least 15 steps off the south end by the end of play. Tanks count double, trucks do not count. If they achieve all their objectives, they achieve a major victory. If they achieve 2, they get a minor victory. An American minor victory is the Germans achieve only 1. And an American major victory means the Germans achieve no objectives. Now, the Americans are going to have a tough time here. Their units are elements of Combat Command B, also known as Blade Force. It is an Anglo-American tank-heavy regimental group. And they went into this valley here, the Tyne Valley, and attempted to set up some forces here. And the Germans decided to push in and see if they could push them out. The Germans are elements of the 190th Panzer Battalion Reinforced. They will be setting up and entering the map rather from the northern edge up here. And they have those 12 turns to achieve their objectives. The American force is comprised of 1 reduced infantry platoon, 11 Stuart tanks, 1 M381, 1 M375, 1 T30, that's a pretty old tank, and 1 Jeep. Their leader is, as I mentioned, 1 major. Their initiative is 2. Their morale is 7/6, and they don't have any off-board artillery. Now, for the Germans, they have 3 platoons of Fallschirmjägers, parachute troops. They have a parachute or Fallschirmjäger machine gun, heavy machine gun. They have an engineer, also a Fallschirmjäger. They have an 81 millimeter mortar, also a Fallschirmjäger. Then they have 2 Panzer IIIHs, 1 Panzer IIIJ, 1 Panzer IVH, 6 trucks, and they will have a captain, a lieutenant, and a sergeant as their leaders. Their initiative is 3. Their morale is 8/7, and they also have no off-board artillery. Special rules. German initiative level will be lowered by 1 for every 3 steps lost, and tanks count double. Trucks do not count. The American initiative is lowered by 1 for every 4 steps lost, with, again, tanks counting double, and the Jeep does not count. The American infantry and major represent the battalion's command staff and must set up in Chewy-Gooey. So I missed that special rule, and I'm going to have to move these guys down here. They may not move until they can spot a German combat unit. Once they spot a German combat unit, they may move normally. All right. So I'll tell you about the conclusion later on, but let's talk about how you assign officers. So here, and this might not be the best example because we don't have a lot, but you have, here's the Fallschirmjäger officers. You have a major, captain, a lieutenant, and a sergeant. And typically what you would do is put the ranks that are in the scenario in a cup and draw them out. Since there's only one of each for captains, lieutenant, and sergeant, the Germans are just going to get these guys. Now on the American side, for the major, there are two majors, so you draw one out, and then actually you can flip it, and I forgot about that. So they're two-sided, but they're one step, basically. And we'll talk about leader casualties later, but here's our captain, right? So you can see his morale is a 10, and then he's got a rating of 1 and 0. And if we flip him over, he's got an 801. So there are two of each here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just roll dice, because I don't know that flipping them, it says to flip them, and I guess I could, but it'd probably just end up on the floor somewhere. So I'm going to actually roll dice to see what each of these are. So for this game, you need D6s. So I have two here. One will be green for the U.S. Army. The other is blue for the Luftwaffe, the Fallschirmjägers. They somewhat match. They're not, obviously, this is bright green and bright blue. They don't exactly match, but they're close enough. So I'm just going to roll the blue one 3 times, and we'll see. And if it's odd, we'll take the face up. And if it's even, we'll take the other side. So odd, so our captain here gets the front side, so that's his counter. Then we get an even with a 6 on the second one, so our lieutenant is going to get his back side, so he'll be a little worse. He's a 911 instead of a 1010. And now for the sergeant, one final roll. It's a 4, so he also gets his back side. So 10 would be the top front, and he gets a 911. So the Fallschirmjägers are pretty elite in terms of their general ability. There really isn't a bad. This actually, I don't know where this die doesn't match the blue one. I'm going to change that up and get a different green die here. All right, I grabbed this one. This is not exactly a great match, but it's a darker green, so it really, they're slightly different size. It's slightly bigger than the blue one, but that's what we're going to use for the game. So those are our dice. Now, according to the rules, the initiative for this scenario, let's take a check here real quick. I guess we roll for initiative. Sometimes no special rules that say who gets initiative. So we're going to roll green for the U.S. forces, blue for the Germans. Germans' initiative modifiers are 3. The U.S. has a 2. So we add those. So the Germans get a 4 plus 3 is a 7. The U.S. gets a 1 plus 2 is 3. So obviously that is a 7-3. And the way initiative works, when you have extra initiative, and I'm only going to use this side, they have 4 more than the Americans do. So you divide that by 2, and they actually get 2 extra. They get 2 actions before they would have to turn it over, and then it alternates actions. So that's how that works. Okay, so since the Germans get to do 2 activations before the US can do 1, what we're going to do is we're going to move our armor onto the board here. And we have a Panzer IV-H, that being our strongest tank. That's the one I'll bring on first. They enter from the northern side of the map. And so we'll bring him in at 701. His movement factor is an 8. Now this terrain, and I mentioned this in the first look, that I like to see like what it looks like on the terrain looks like on the back of the playbook here. You actually have rocky road, hill and town. So what this would just be like basically desert. And if we check our terrain effects chart, desert, I believe, is just simply clear. So you can see here on clear, under mech, because this is a tank, so it's mechanized, it's 1.5 per hex. Okay. And I forgot to dig in, and I forgot to fix this stuff too. So let me do that right now, and I'll actually do it right on camera. So we're going to take these guys, and we're just going to, whoops, don't move the map. I try not to put stuff under glass because it, or plexi, only because it creates a glare from the lights, and I like this nice clean look. And we're going to zoom in on areas and things as I play. So we're going to keep our Jeep, I think, down here with the major and that one APC, and because I think that's what it's required to do. Actually, no, it's the infantry and the major. So, but I'm going to leave the APC down there as well. And then perhaps what I should do is move this, I think, yeah, that's a Stewart. We're going to put the Stewart up here. Okay, because he has a range of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So any German that hits here, he's got a clear line of sight. He's on an elevated area, so he'd be able to shoot. Now his firepower is only a 2. That's one of the big issues the U.S. forces are going to have here in this particular scenario, is that they don't have a lot of firepower. The Germans, by contrast, here, this Panzer IV has a firepower of 11 with the same range of 6. So that makes that a little bit tougher on the Americans. And we will put this T-30 up there as well. Maybe they have to be 6 away from the northern border too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, he needs to be here, I guess. I think he can still, maybe. We'll see. We'll put this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He can go right. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he can go here or here. Let's put him there. And then I'm going to put this this M381. What that means is you can see the white for the firepower and the range here, the 810. That indicates he's a bombardment unit. So this is basically like a mounted mortar. And we're going to put him, let's see, his range is 10. So that's a pretty good range. Where do we want to put him? I'd like to put him somewhere where he'd be reasonably protected, but he is also motorized, so he can move. Let's put him right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's put him right here. Now he can, he needs a leader to spot for him. So actually we should put him over here by, perhaps by the major, or we'll put him up on the hill here. And the major doesn't really have any actions until he can spot a German unit. So until a German unit appears in this area or through this gap here, because this hill and this hill will block all of this stuff. We also have some rocky terrain up there. So there's great visibility on the desert, except for the fact that we have elevations here, and elevations obviously block line of sight. So now we'll place dug in markers here on the units that can dig in, which are pretty much all of these guys here. Anyone on this road or track cannot be dug in, so we will just dig in these guys right here. And then in the town, if we look at our terrain effect chart for a town, you can see town, entrench, yes, dig in, no. So the units that are in the town cannot dig in. Okay, so we have some dug in units, the units that are off-road basically, but everybody else is not able to dig in. Okay, so back to the action here. So we've got this guy right here. He's going to move. Oh, I didn't talk about special rules for the Army at Dawn in general. So here are the special rules, right? So you have terrain. All the rules are in effect. The German SP 251 British Bren and American M3 are the only APCs, so we have some of those, obviously. We don't have any armored cars in this, so we don't have to worry about that. Open top AFVs, I don't think we have any of those here. Oh, we do. We have the T-30, so that's an open top AFV. Then you have tank leaders. All American, British, and German tank units in an Army at Dawn have tank leaders and armor efficiency. We'll talk about armor efficiency in a little bit. The Italians have tank leaders assigned by scenario. We don't have any Italians in this either, so we'll skip this. We don't have any 25-pounders because there are no British in this. We don't have a German 28mm or 75mm infantry gun. Leader compatibilities, they can only do their own nationality and service, except German Army leaders who may command German Air Force and Italian units. We don't have any German Army leaders. We have Air Force leaders. Day and night, you can tell by dawn and dusk. We don't have to worry about that. This whole scenario is in daylight. And smoke and illumination, all off-board artillery may fire smoke. And we don't have any of that. On-board artillery and mortars of 76mm or greater may also imply smoke, which means the American M381, because that is equipped with a mortar, can fire smoke. All right. So nothing crazy there in terms of special rules. So this would be 1. Now we go 2, 3. Okay, now right here, we have our T-30. Now his range is 8 and his firepower is 10. So from here, now we can tell he can see this guy. He just moved into visible range. There's no, because of, if you trace it, it's pretty close, but I'm pretty sure he makes it. So he can see him and he can fire if he wishes to, right? So his firepower is a 10. And for example purposes, we will fire him so that we can get right into the action here. All right, so we'll be working with this table right here, the anti-tank fire table. Right, you roll 2 dice, add the attacker's anti-tank fire value, which we know is a 10. Subtract the target's armor value, that's a 5. Pick it up so you can see a little better. You can see the yellow 5 in the red box. That is the armor value. So we subtract that, which makes a 5, and we roll the dice, and then you get a result here. And then there are modifiers, right? So modifiers are cumulative. The target occupies heavy forest, no. Target fired at through hedgerow, no. Target occupies slope, no. Target moved in the immediately preceding action segment. He is moving right now. This is opportunity fire, so this would be a -1 because that does apply. Targets dug in, no. More than 5 hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's not more, he's at 5 hexes. Target fired on when spotting range 1 or 2 due to night. Don't have to worry about that. Personnel firing anti-tank, no. Not a river, not adjacent. Attack this turn through 2 or more non-adjacent hexes. Applies only to attacks traced through non-adjacent hex. So yeah, no. All right, so we're going to roll out 2 dice and add 5. We got a 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 or less is none, no effect. Okay, so now we would place a moved fired marker on here, which means he's done for this turn. He's taken his action. Our unit can continue his movement. Now their range is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's move up 1, 2 more. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And he's at his 5th movement point here. Now he can fire, and I don't think this guy can yet, but he can fire at him. So again, why not? Now, this being a Stuart, it's got a range of 8, but a firepower only of 2. So we're going to take 2, subtract 5 from that. That's a -3. So we're going to subtract 3 from our roll. So actually, that means we shouldn't even bother, because we actually, with the -1, this was actually an 8. And again, the -1 would make it a -4. So even if we rolled a 12, that would be an 8, which means it's a miss. So he's not even going to bother to try to fire at him. So we can continue to move. That's 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we put a moved on him. Now the Germans get a second activation. They're going to bring another tank on. We'll take this guy right here. This is a Panzer IIIH. And so what we'll do here is we will start him in the same spot, I guess. And he's going to, actually, we'll start him here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now he's going to go upslope. Upslope. So when you move upslope, oh, you know what? I just screwed up, right? It's 1.5. So that's 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5. So he has to stop right here. And then he would be 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5. So he has to stop right there. And gotta keep the details in mind, my friend. All right. So that's there too. Now the Americans get to go. So this is an interesting thing. They can pass if they wish to. This is an interesting dilemma here, because if we move, right? Because here's the thing, if you move up adjacent, you get a positive modifier, right? But the Germans, if they win initiative in the next turn, and let's say I move this Stuart 1, 2, 3, 4, right? He's adjacent now, so he's going to get a bonus for that. It's a point blank shot on this Panzer IV. But if the Germans get initiative, when all the markers come off, they get to fire first if they wish to. And why wouldn't he if he's got a Stuart sitting right there? Because that adjacency thing, that's for both sides, right? So you would end up, that's somewhat of a suicide mission, actually. And the way anti-tank fire works is you can't combine. Everybody fires separate. So, having two Stuarts fire at them they're not going to add their power together. It's going to be one will fire and then the other will fire. So even if I move this guy here to stack them together, which I could, that's still going to, that might actually not be a bad idea because he won't be able to attack both of them. But this guy would be able to attack one of them. So you get a little bit of, you see where I'm going here. Now, the Germans have only 4 tanks. The Americans have a bunch. They've got 11 Stuarts and a T-30, so they have 12 tanks total. So it's a 3-to-1 advantage in terms of the armor, but the armor quality definitely favors the Germans. But you know what? Here's what we'll try. We're going to try this just to see if we can knock one of them out, because that's key to this whole thing, is if we can knock one of their tanks out. And again, if we look at our anti-tank fire table, if you get a +1 for the target adjacent, target is attacked this turn through 2 or more non-adjacent hexes, right? So basically this is like flanking fire. So if we were to move this guy and go 1, 2, 3, actually he's got a 9. So that's a benefit because that gives them an extra hex, right? Because each 2 hexes cost 3 movement points. 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9. Or we could just go direct, I guess. 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another, basically. So we'll move that there. And we're going to put a moved on him. And this is dangerous, right? This is dangerous. But my thinking here is we move this guy here. Then you have your flanking fire situation. So if he fires at him, then we would get 2 or more non-adjacent hexes. And that would be a big bonus that's the kind of bonus that they need. It's still a long shot to hit them, but they're adjacent, and they would get so they would get a total of a +3 on that, and that would be enough to push them up to where if they rolled a good number, they would actually be able to knock out that Panzer IV. So back to the Germans, we're going to move another tank on board here. And we'll go, let's do this one over here. All right, so we'll start here. That's 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and 7.5. Now he's back off the slope, so I think he could have fired at him when he was there, or maybe here. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4. His firepower is only a 2. So again, their armor's a 4, so that's a -2. Plus the opportunity fire would make it a -3. So again, you roll a 12, it becomes a 9. A 9 is no effect. So there's no benefit to them firing. So they're just going to move up here. Like so. And then we go back to the Americans. We'll do our other move with this Stuart. He'll go 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and stop right there. Drop the moved on him. And now back to the Germans. We'll bring our final tank on. He's going to also come in on this side. And if we were to go uphill, you add +1 cost for going up slope. Slope hex side is any hex with an elevation line running through it. The elevation line indicates an elevation 20 meters or more above the adjacent terrain. If one set of elevations encircles another, the smaller of the two is one level higher than the larger if not indicated on the board. Slope movement costs are paid only when entering the hex with the elevation line. A unit that moves along the elevation line also pays the slope cost. The hexes in the interior of elevations that have no markings upon them are also of the same elevation as the slope, but are not slope hexes. Instead, they are treated as normal clear terrain unless filled with other terrain markings. Right, pretty straightforward. So we have 1.5, then we'll pay another one when we go in here. This would become 3 plus 1 is 4, right? But we have a total of 7. So that would enable us to go here, and that would be exactly 7. Now, again, I'm pretty sure these guys cannot yet see them because it's uphill. This hill here in front of it, and then they're back there. So I'm going to drop a moved marker on here. Obviously, these guys can see them, but again, they're faced with the same situation of not being able to fire at them. But they are dug in, which gives them an advantageous terrain modifier for when they're fired upon. So we go back to the Americans, and at this point, I think they're just going to pass. These guys are all on a road. They're dug in, and I think it's, well, let's see. If we have Germans coming in on this side, do we want to move any Shermans down here in support? Tough part is that, well, on the road, because you're on a road, so you can get road movement rate rather, and that would be 2/3 for each hex. So you can go 3 for 2 points. So you could go 1, 2, 3. That would only cost 2 movement points to be right here, and then we can go off road. 3.5, 5, 6, 7.5. And then they could also move, oh no, they'll stay right there. So they're at 7.5. We'll drop a moved on them. Go back to the Germans. Now we're out of armor, so we're going to start bringing on our infantry, our Fallschirmjägers and the leaders, and they're going to arrive in trucks. So the trucks are vulnerable to fire. They do not have any armor. So this is going to be key as far as what the what the American armor does in response. Now, you can knock the trucks out and kill the infantry perhaps, but you might also end up leaving yourself exposed to the German armor. So that could be a tough ask really for them. We got this tank here, which is going to have a clear line of sight to these 2 hexes. This guy up here can shoot at these hexes here, and that's a tank, right? So whichever side can knock out the other side's tanks is really going to be the one that's going to have an advantage in this scenario. Okay, so the next guys we're going to move in here are our Fallschirmjäger captain, with one of the platoons, and they're going to be in a truck. I'm going to put the truck on top. As you can see, our truck here has a movement factor of 8, but no armor and obviously no firepower or anything. So we're going to try something a little sneaky, I think, and that is, this is a motorized unit. So as far as terrain effects for clear, they get a 2. It costs 2 as opposed to 1.5, which is what it costs for a mechanized unit. This is a motorized unit. So their movement point of 8, right? If we start here, that costs them 2. If we move here, that's 4. And then we can move into the rough, which is 4. And then that is therefore 8. Now the rough gives them a -1 for being attacked by direct fire or bombardment fire. So if they drop mortars on them or fire the machine guns, that is, good cover for them, so to speak. So we're going to put a moved fired on there. Now the Americans are up next. Let's move another one of our Stuarts out of here. Now they can all self-activate because all of the tanks again have their own leader. Now the way leaders work, and we haven't really talked about this, is these tanks here also have a tank leader. So if I activated this stack, I could activate all of the adjacent ones as well, all at once. That's a key strategic element or tactical element of this particular game series, that the leaders are of paramount importance. So you don't want your leaders to get killed. Obviously, that's usually not good in any tactical game, but you also want to try and take advantage of their abilities. So if I move him out, that obviously removes one, and I already removed one from this side, because when I set them all up here so that I could, in theory, activate them as a clump and move them or have them fire. But again, if they're firing with their armor, now their direct fire is 8 and range of 5. That's their machine guns, basically, right? So 8 is pretty decent. The 2 for the main gun is not, because the Stuarts were basically a scout tank. Early in the war, the heavier tanks had been going to the British during Lend-Lease, and the Soviets, I guess. But so the American army itself didn't have a ton of the heavier tanks, although they were starting to come in, obviously, as production ramped up. But that's a digression. We're going to move our Stuarts down the road and then go off-road up in this direction. Just this one Stuart, I think, to try and take care of this infantry that's coming in over here. On the German side, I plan on bringing more infantry in here and maybe over here as well, so that we can, we'll have some pressure in the middle, but I want to do the 2 wings, essentially, to come in. We want to knock out as many American tanks as possible, of course, and then ultimately we want to capture Chewy-Gooey, and we also want to exit some people off the south end. That's how you get a major victory. All right, so having said all of that, let's move our Stuart. So again, on a road, it's 2/3. So he can move 3 hexes for 2. So that's 2 points. Then he can move another 3. So 2, and then that would be 4. That leaves him with 5. So that's 5.5, 7, and then 8.5. And he stops right there. Now, again, this is all dangerous stuff because we do have 2 tanks here. The other 2 tanks are over here. But this guy's a Panzer IV with a really strong gun on it. And the Panzer IIIs don't have a lot of pop, but the Panzer IV does. So now we go back to the Germans and we bring in our second officer here, or leader, I should say. And that is going to be our lieutenant. Also, he's with the machine gun weapons team. And he's in a truck. And they're going to enter over here. So again, that'll be 2, 4, and I'm going to put them in here for protection purposes. And that is 8, and then we'll drop another movement marker on them, moved fired. It's hard for me to keep from sliding this. It moves real easy on my table. That's one benefit of putting a cover over the top of it, but again, I'm trying to avoid the glare. Back to the Americans. The only other units I might consider moving would be these guys right here, because they're not dug in. I don't want to leave my dug in positions. And I'm not sure I want to move these guys yet. We could go here, which would be 2. It's really 1 1/3, but I'm just rounding up because that 1/3 1/2. Well, actually, 1 1/3, 2 1/3, plus off the other terrain would be another 1 1/2. So that would be 3.83. So basically 4. And then 5 1/2, 7. So let's do that. We're going to move one of these guys here. Now he has the ability to shoot into this valley. And I think I'll leave this one here as a way to maybe be able to activate all these tanks in case I need to. And we'll drop another moved on there. Go back to the Germans. They have 4 more units they need to move. We'll move our sergeant, who is with a regular platoon. And they're also in a truck, of course. They're going to go right here. We can move right into that one. We'll put that would be 4. That would be 7 to go there. So let's do that. Let's put them here. All right. Back to the Americans. They will pass. 2, 4, 8. We'll put them here. The Americans will again pass. We'll bring in our engineers. They're in a truck as well. I didn't put the truck on top. We'll go there. And our mortar, we want to put near a leader. So we have 2 leaders over here, I believe. Yep. And 1 right here, I think. Yes, that's our lieutenant. So the best place to drop the mortars would probably be on the infantry. So what we will do, I think, is try to move these guys. Go 2, 4, 7. They would have to stop right there. So they're on a slope, right? Or actually, they could just go 2, 3, plus 2 more is 5, and then they could move here and be at 7. And now they're behind this hill, which is a good spot for a mortar. The mortar's range is 10, right? So if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, he can hit here and here and here. So that's good. That's good. So we'll be able to drop mortars on these guys as soon as we get a leader that can spot for us. All right, so that is the end of turn 1, because both sides will pass now. So we will go to 12-15 turn, and I'll clean up the markers here. I'm going to pause to do that. We'll remove all the moved fired markers and then roll for initiative to start turn number 2. Okay, we're on to turn 2 now. So let's roll for initiative. So again, the Germans get a +3, the Americans a +2. And this time it is a 3 and a 3. So that gives the Germans a 6-5 advantage, which means they only get 1 initiative. So no extra turn. So they get to go first, and then the Americans will go. So first thing we're going to try to do here is take care of this situation, right? Again, I pointed out it was a risk for the Americans to try that, but try it they did. So we have an 11-6 here, right? And 2 8-5s. Now the armor, another issue with the Stuart is its armor was thin. It's a 1. So it's going to be a 10. Now a 10 on your anti-tank chart is target loses 1 step, right? And if it survives that reduced strength, it must make spit it out, Joe. A morale check, an M2 morale check. All right, so, but, right, that's a 10 to 12. So if I roll a 3, that would be target eliminated. So again, as I said, it was a gamble. You roll the dice, they lost. The Americans lost. So let's take care of, I guess, this one. It's a bigger threat to more units. you know, with these guys up here and everything. So we're going to roll. It's an 8. That becomes an 18. Minus 1 is a 17. They're adjacent, so that would be a +1, which would again make it an 18. But regardless, a 13 or more, his target is eliminated. So the Americans have lost a unit. That is one of, it takes, they count double. So that's not great for them. But it takes 4 losses of tanks before they take a hit to their initiative value. All right, so he fired. So I should probably well, it doesn't matter. It means he took an action. It's basically like an ops complete marker in some other games. Putting moved and fired together, save some markers. So he's done. Now the Americans can go. We have some options here. Trying to think about what we want to do. Looking at everything here. So let's see. He's adjacent. His firepower is at 2. It'd be a -3, but he gets a +1. So it'd be a -2. If he rolled a 12, it would be a 10. Yeah, so that's what we'll do. We're going to fire this tank at him because he's next door. We need a 12, but if we get it, and we did not, we got a 7. So that was a roll of the dice, literally, to hopefully get lucky. We did not. Go back to the Germans. We can try. The Germans have multiple options as well. We're going to have our truck here unload. Okay, so unloading is pretty straightforward. Well, I just realized I had paused the recording, and so some stuff was missed. So we had these two exchange fire with each other. They both missed. We had this guy shoot at him and had no effect. This guy fired at him and had no effect. And I believe that's all that has really happened in this turn. What we were looking at now is moving this truck with the lieutenant and the engineers is right here. So we were going to move them here, which would cost 2, and then up the slope would be 3, plus 2 more is 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So he was going to take opportunity fire at him here because he's not going to be within range. So he's got clear line of sight. They're on the same level. They're both 20 elevation. So he's going to shoot at this truck. It's direct fire. We checked the modifiers. It was a 7 because he has an 8 firepower, and it was -1 because of the range being more than 3. I rolled a 6, so it becomes a 5, and a 5 on our direct fire chart under the 7 column is M, which is a morale check. All units without armor values in the target hex check morale. So we're going to do our morale check now for these guys. So the morale for the Germans is 8, and our leader is a 9, right? Yes, he's a 9. So he gets a 9, and the truck and the troops get an 8. So we're going to roll, and it's a 5. So that's good for the we'll say with the soldiers. Now we'll do. Do I have to check morale for a vehicle, for a truck? I think I probably do. Oh, leaders first. So that would be for our leader. So he passed. Leader morale. And because of the leader bonus, his morale bonus is a 1. So both of the other two would also have a 9. So let's roll. So the unit gets a 3. So the engineers are fine, and the truck gets a 4. So all 3 are fine. They passed the morale check. So this guy has now fired. So they're still good. Now they're up here. So that was what, 2, and 3 is 5. They're going to move here and unload, which costs 1. So they are done. And our lieutenant is now here as well. Okay, so back to the Americans. And let's have our Stewart here. What do we want it to do? Again, it's going to come down to getting initiative. Initiative is key, right? So let's That would be 1.5 plus 1, so that's 2.5, 5, 7.5. And now he's adjacent and on a slope, so he'll get a little bit of an advantage next turn when he, assuming they win initiative, he has a good shot at attacking this tank here. So back to the Germans. Now here we have a tank, right? He's a 4. And he's a 2. Or 1 armor. So again, that's 3. It'll become a 2 because of the slope that he's on. So it's a 2. And he moved. So that would be another -1. So it's only a +1 on the die roll. And that's a 6, which is nowhere near good enough. So we will put that on there. And back to the Americans. And I think at this point they will probably pass. Now we do have this 81. He can only fire at units he can see. That would be these guys right here. But this again is a, that's an armor unit, but he could try bombardment fire on here. And his firepower is an 8. His range is a 10. So he can self-spot these guys because they're on the same elevation. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that he can see him, and he can. So the range, the spotting range is 12. So he's definitely within 12. It's like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's 5 hexes away. So he's going to fire. It's a bombardment attack, so it's different. We have not seen that yet. Here's the bombardment chart. Okay, so their firepower is an 8. There are no modifiers, I don't think. He's not in a town or entrenchment. He's not. It's not none of these. It's not rocky. He's not dug in. The target is none of that. It's not friendly fire. No, he's not firing. Not firing over. It's not a. Let me check friendly fire here. Not adjacent to a friendly unit, so no friendly fire. It's not a loaded truck. +1 for being spotted by the firing unit. So that's going to be a 9. That's still not going to move it up, though, because you have to get all the way from an 8. You have to go all the way to a 12 to get into the next column. So we're in this column right here. 5 through 8 is nothing. Anything else is going to result in some kind of morale check again. We got a 9. So a 9 is, I believe, going to be, oh, it's nothing. I was looking at the 12 column. So 5 through 9 is nothing in the 8 column. So he fired, but it didn't move. Drop that on there. Now we go back to the Germans. Let's unload our mortar. And that counts as being moved. So he can't do any action. But next turn, we'll be able to start dropping mortars on people. We do have a leader adjacent, but he doesn't have to be adjacent for spotting purposes. Back to the Americans, they will pass. I don't really see more moves for them at the moment that I want to make. Then for the Germans, we have, what is this? This is the engineers. So, that's the machine gun. Well, if we move these guys, he already fired, but this guy could fire at him. That would be 2, 4. Or we could go 2, 6. Let's do that. We'll go here to move up a little closer. Moved on there. And the Americans will pass again. These guys have a little bit more options. So they could go 3, 5, 8. We're taking a chance here. We'll just stop there. I was trying to find a place where I could hopefully move and stop and have 1 left so I could unload, which makes them less vulnerable, but I could not. So that's going to actually, I think, end this turn. Unless I wanted to move these guys. But direct fire on a armored unit is not particularly effective unless we try to assault them. Their movement factor is only a 3, though. So, oh, did I not put the truck on top of them? Or did I already unload them? Well, we're just going to say, I'm just going to put that on there and say that they were unloaded this turn. I don't remember. I think that might be one I didn't put the truck on top last turn, so that's my fault. That's going to end this turn, so we're going to go to turn 3 at 12:30, and I think I'm going to stop the video here, and there'll be a part 2, and we'll do more turns in part 2, but we're going to stop this one for now, and then we'll pick this up in a subsequent video in a couple days. So, as always, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. I hope you're finding this either useful or entertaining or both. If so, please consider liking, sharing, and/or subscribing. Those are always appreciated. That will do it for this one. My name's Joe. This is Hexed Encountered. It is Tanktoberfest. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.